Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Texas Leadership Network May installment. Today we have Miguel, who's going to walk us through his topic of choice. And remind me again, Miguel, what are we covering today?
We're talking about managing conflict.
Managing conflict. Does anybody relate to that? Is that a hot topic? There was a reason that I kind of opened with that piece of conflict, right? We all deal with conflict routinely, whether it's in our homes, with our clients, with people we love and trust, or people that we don't love or trust so much. But conflict is a big deal. And so Miguel is going to walk us through some material, and then we're going to have a robust discussion shortly thereafter. So Miguel, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending this Texas Leadership Network Mastermind. I'm just going to go over, a quick summary of what some things that we have in focal point for managing conflict, among other great solutions they offer. But this is very important for me because as I learned and I'm doing these assessments, one of the things, like you mentioned, we just talk about doing therapy, counseling. People open up when you do debrief a lot more than sometimes we expect. And the number one things that comes out in these assessments is the culture and the conflicts among team supervisors. So this is something that I see that plays a very important in the workplace. And even as a small business, you can have conflict within the two partners, the two owners, 3 employees, 100 employees. Conflict is something that is important. But let me share my presentation. Okay, Troy, can you make me able to share the presentation?
Should be able to.
You have to make me a host, I believe.
Yeah, let me do that.
And they're right back.
Should be able to.
Still host disabled participant screen.
There we go. I think I got it now, Miguel.
There you
Sorry
go.
about that.
Got it.
Thank you, sir. Sorry about that.
Go back. Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So, like I said, we want to make sure and go back to managing conflict. The managing personal and organizational conflict is very important nowadays to be successful in any business, as more like I mentioned, or bigger. Have to reduce, eliminate conflicts within the organization, provide guidance to your leadership, and others have to handle it. We are human beings. We are different. We have different behaviors, different expectations, different things that trigger us. So that's something that we have to learn from each other and use the conflicts to build a coalition and growth, build a stronger team to have better results. And, the agenda have this for today, what is the impact? Hello? What is the impact? Identifying the conflicts, the different types, the management system and processes, there's ways to handle them as well. Helping employees handle conflicts. Like I mentioned, everybody handles things differently. Some people are stressed over some things over others, and then the impact of effective conflict management, which that's very important. The definition, as a lot of people don't pay attention sometimes, the practice of recognizing and dealing with disputes in a rational, balanced, and effective way. We'll get to discussions, either a football team, politics, but you have to have a middle ground balance to get ahead and move forward without hindering the idea, sharing, and problem solving, and not shutting down or communication. That's what I see a lot. Sometimes people get upset and they start talking, they shut down their communication, regardless of your style of communication. So conflict management implemented within a business environment usually involves effective communication. Yes, it's, you have to implement a system, problem solving abilities, good negotiation skills to restore and focus the company's overall goals. Sometimes you have very good people, you can designate leaders to managing conflict in the organization. So that's something that I see sometimes, but on the other side, conflict can destroy a team that hasn't spent time learning how to deal with it. And, does anybody has any, examples? Yes, as you mentioned, Kristen, she was dealing with, with a ton of texts and blogs and people just wanted to still, I didn't know people still using flip-flops, but, that can create conflict. Because some people says, what's wrong with my phone? It was not, it's conflict can occur for many little things and it can grow. So you have to have conflict sometimes with executives or partners, members of the manager to staff, which is common between employees, departments, divisions, and something that has a big impact sometimes is company to vendor. Sometimes your vendors is what brings the sales and the money. You have to have resolve those conflicts right away. So that's something that we have to look for those things and have a good process to follow up. No, as long as we're human beings, like I mentioned, we are different. Everybody's different. That's what is the beauty about us. We contribute to part of the team, and communication with each other. Conflict has occurred since the early age of human being, the history. But we evolve with their relationships. We know what to manage and have to avoid conflict because it generates fight or responses, which, in my experience, a lot of people in the leadership who avoid conflict, they do it because they don't like it. They don't know how to deal with it, and it can have a very bad consequences or devastating consequences for the business, from leaving employees or turnover the culture. So that's some of the things that we know about conflict and things that we can address following it. The types of conflict we have interpersonal, which we know most of us, the commonplace, the conflict interpersonal can include our cultural background, education, and work place experience. Sometimes culture is a big, we come from different backgrounds and things, but we work in the same company or business. We have to put those things aside and learn and understand from each other. And something that, sometimes it's hard, but people, they pass that. So that's not something that is going to hinder productivity or communication, but you have to pass that. But like I said, it's about 34%, 28% in effective management practices, meetings, the way you communicate tasks, by working conditions, which goes back for me for culture, what I've seen, abuse of authority, how you treat your employees, which is very consistent with a lot of people why they're leaving their jobs right now, the big resignation besides money or better quality of life, or the leadership is just not there in consistent leadership. That's something that is going to create conflict. Why? Because they don't deal with it. The behavioral conflicts, we're humans, and social discrimination, harassment conditions that create hostile work environment. That's what we have to have a very good HR department and trainings, proactive trainings and communication to avoid those, because those, as can have financial implications in case of a lawsuit or something like that. So something that we have to make sure get addressed right away. And conflicts with disagreements over creativity and ideas, and that is very common, but sometimes people move on very fast from this one I have seen. From development, the company and the team, because people have different ideas how to tackle marketing, how to tackle sales, the product design. It used to get the middle ground and have a process, who spreads the idea first, or what process you have to prove your idea, all those things that you can implement, and we can help implement those processes. And some workplace conflicts are a result of work style or effectiveness. There is an absence of tolerance or lack of accountability. That's funny because I just did this assessment for 10 C-level suite, and everything looked good from the outside. And like I mentioned, when I did the assessment, the number one thing that came out that is puts everybody on edge, lack of accountability. That creates a lot of conflict, but it's based on how you put accountability, communication, and what you expect from employees. So like I said, it's the work style. People, they use delegate, but don't tell deadlines or don't make people accountable. That can have an impact on those who are very productive. So that creates another type of conflicts there, but all these areas are solvable. And like I said, a lot of these things came out when we do the DISC assessments, the behavioral assessments. It can help us guide where those things are coming from. Sometimes, not all the time. We have different causes of conflicts, interpersonal, frustration, jealousy, toxic. I see one of them is not listed, but I see egos sometimes. They create conflict when they shouldn't. Lack of accountability, lack of clarity about issues, communication failure, urgency. But this is just some type of behavioral superiority complex. I guess that's kind of the ego. But over the same new service model, competition, we are human beings. We sometimes compete to be better. Sometimes like the recognition, some of them no, sometimes it's personal. But sometimes I believe competition is good, but it has to be healthy. That's something that you have to foster in your organization, because competition can lead to innovation. You can strive to do better as well. And work styles and effectiveness, like I said, work styles, we have people that are direct, indirect, different behaviors that you learn each other's behavior with your DISC assessments, and we share it, you can have way better communication and productivity. And, that's something that people sometimes, I see people don't agree with the DISC assessment, but you're seeing it right in front of you. Yes, that's you, and they don't agree, but that's something that we help them understand. And I just had somebody who says, no, that's not me. And I did an exercise for them to their home and family, and she came back, yeah, my family said this, I'm that person. So that's something that they don't see it, but they help you figure out, some of the things. This is just some information about the conflicts, the data that we got. 80% of employees deal with conflicts on level. We know that. 10% conflict health or performance failures, which is related to accountability sometimes, or training. You have to train people before you're given a task, or they make sure they have the tools. Some other areas, conflicts, there are direct results of stress of the work environment, which is mental health. Now it's a big priority for some of the employers or staff. Mental health sometimes is better than get better pay, flexibility. So some of the areas that we look to make sure that there's a balance to increase productivity, innovation, and at the end of the day, that should bring bigger profits and better work environment. So like I said, it's, about 360 billion paid hours is the amount of which lost corporate America due to conflicts. That's what you have to tackle conflict right at the beginning. It can cost you money and productivity. So that's very important. Desirability, repercussions, organization, people, and processes. Group team, allow, encourage this dissenting opinion. Must be a safe environment. There's no repercussions, doesn't matter why they discuss. Best to have mechanisms and processes. Like I said, there's ways to handle conflict in a safe environment, or something that this processes that we can develop and help. And with employees, you can build cohesive teams. Like I said, have somebody who is good at dealing with conflict, that is got a moderator, mediator that can help, promote learning and engagement. Engagement for me is very important, because sometimes people are not engaged and they don't pay attention regardless of what you say. So it's to develop an engagement tracking tool that's important. Increases individual involvement. People have to be involved in this conflict. The culture supports healthy conflict. Healthy conflict, what I mean by that is this conflict, they're going to bring failures and systems in different areas that need to be solved for the better of the organization. So that's what I mean by a healthy conflict. Sometimes conflict brings things that need to be addressed to improve, productivity, manufacturing, sales. So that's something that sometimes conflict is good to bring those things, to air those out. Effective conflict reduces turnover. That's correct. People get frustrated with conflict. Conflict start having confrontations, and people feel frustrated. Eliminates fear. And fear is like, you have to have a safe environment, and you have a conflict with somebody, that you are free to solve it without repercussion and damaging their relationship. So customers, improve their customer relations, interaction. Service delivery is frequently impacted. But the most common things I hear in the manufacturing orders are the lack of quality or delivery time. So you have to solve those conflicts because you don't want a big client to move to another company or service. So that's very important to address because that's what is gonna bring you revenue and pay your bill. So conflict with customers is something that I do recommend you guys do an assessment sometimes and have a process, have to deal with a systematic process and who is good at solving those conflicts and customers.
Miguel, if we could, before you go on, go back real quick, sorry. What about on the groupthink side? Let's open it up to some folks here. Have we seen this happen within our companies or previous companies before? Where that, because there's not conflict and people don't feel safe to voice their opinion, that the group just says, oh yeah, that's a great idea, boss, let's just go with that.
I'd like to comment. That's a great point. I'd like to comment on it. And I think probably one of the biggest indicators of potential groupthink is when you observe people in sort of group or staff meeting, and there's no questions, no comments. Who's ever leading the meeting it's a monologue, and there's no opportunity to push back or offer a different opinion, or worse, it's not encouraged. So yeah, I think see groupthink a lot in some of our environments.
Yeah, coming from the corporate side, I've worked at a company before that basically the CEO's opinion is what mattered at the end of the day. I mean, yeah, the CEO's opinion carries a lot of weight, but whatever he went into with his opinion is what everyone came out to with the group opinion. It was not a healthy discussion ever. So.
Right, and I've seen in mergers and acquisitions as well, right? The acquiring company, right, comes in with a point of view, and that point of view is it creates tremendous groupthink. In fact, and depending on culturally, right? So this was an acquisition that it was a US based company that was acquiring a company in Mexico, and you could see, culturally. If you don't have anything, my mother always told me, if I don't have anything to say nice, don't speak up.
Yeah.
The other cultural aspect is if you have to wait to get negative, like no positive feedback is bad. Like silence is not good, but the Americans didn't recognize that. And so, walked in with, we know this is our business. We acquired you. And you could see after a while that passive aggressive group think where, virtually like, okay, cabron, if you think you know so much, I'll wait for you to ask me the question, because that's the tone that was set. And so it was group think, but it was also like passive aggressive. And so knowing your room and knowing your culture, knowing the behaviors, understanding the communication styles is really important to avoid that kind of, we'll go along until we can no longer be in business.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That what you guys said. Thank you, Brian, for bringing that up. And the communication styles is very important, and the culture. That's something that it really helps. But the passive aggressive, yes, that's true. I've seen that happen too. You have the core company values. We do promote these a lot. Corporate values are governing behaviors for all the activities. The principles of communication, cooperation within the company, you have to promote it, stick to it, and have a good mission, a statement and value statement, and all those things to be communicated with the staff. So that's what motivates. And it goes back to this assessment. We have the motivators and the talent assessments that they tell you what skills everybody has, and the other ones, nobody has to be perfect. That's what makes the team greater. We all put those skills together to make the greatness of the organization. And, the core values: teamwork, excellence, respect, customer first, innovation, and integrity. So if everybody agrees, those are the main company values for some of the companies. And, 5 behaviors of conflict, as you guys, with you guys' experience, you can see competitive, the chart, they do avoidance, the turtle, you scroll down, the one address the issue, accommodating. The teddy bear is always nice and don't be assertive. All those are different, but we have to learn from each other. Collaborative. The owl, they have a very good interpretation with that one. Compromise and the fox. And you guys, you can tell when you've seen this in the workplace and companies you deal, clients or your own. This the descriptions below, they're pretty common. If you understand, everybody has deal with this type of behaviors or types of complex and the types of behaviors, so you can relate to those. Obstacles to conflict resolution. It's the hard factors is the issues, the structures, company objectives, which the organizational structure, like Dennis just mentioned, the mentality of the company coming in without conveying a lot of information, just expecting and the other side shutting down, saying, "Oh, so much." The perfect example is not open for a safe environment to communicate and talk. And like Brian said, just what the CEO says, it goes, and I think that often, so that hinders the company to grow and do better. But if anybody has any examples of this one, for example, of their issues.
Yeah, I just kind of want to go back to the group think. So, probably the most powerful thing in any of these environments is having an enlightened leader, either leading the company and or leading discussions and meetings or major initiatives. Because unless they, are open to the opportunity or prospect of being vulnerable, a comment simply as, hey, team, I don't have all the answers. I'm really depending on you to help me clarify my thinking or to deliver the optimal solution. Unless you sort of have that sort of a mindset and or mindset or attitude that's going on in the environment, it's really tough to get. The obstacles will be just a permanent way of doing business. Thanks.
Thank you, and you hit that because the being vulnerable is part of emotional intelligence, empathy, and compassion as a leader that we have to have, and that's very important. That you don't have all the answers, you're vulnerable and show that for your team. So that's something that is very true.
Hey, Miguel, I was looking at that previous chart too, and one thing that struck me when you're reading all these, you're looking at the hard factors and the soft factors. It strikes me that there is, though, and I want to check to see if you agree and maybe want to expand on it. There's a healthy level potentially of conflict inside of organizations, right? There's a particular organization that I'm engaged with now, and I've said this a couple times. It's okay to fail here as long as you're nice about it. And so, you get into we're trying to manage conflict to the extent that we're not going to raise issues, right? And so, yeah, there will be conflict. Kind of speaks to the group think. But even in some of those situations where, there's people are failing, people are not succeeding, we're not meeting goals, we're not meeting objectives, but that's okay as long as we're nice about it. And so there has to be some level of conflict and some level of constructive engagement and constructive disagreement in order to power through those, because failing as long as you're nice about it, that doesn't keep you in business either.
Oh no, you are right, because like I said, we fail because in order to succeed you're going to fail, but in the conflicts and that you mentioned and you said healthy conflicts can bring issues that need to be solved. They're impacting the organization. That is true, and that's going to help bring some issues to air out and fix them or improve. But yeah, it's like I said, that's what I tell some of the CEOs. Somebody brings something bad happened in the production line. You lost product. Just be positive. You failed. Like this, how it happened. How to prevent it and move on and improve. And always improve on your communication, because when people get upset and they start pointing fingers about conflict, but you don't solve the problem. So like I said, by failing, you're going to have success and avoid that happening again. But it's things that they have to be bring to the surface, and sometimes it's through, like you mentioned, healthy conflict. So that's very true. Thank you.
Yeah, so jumping in on that, sorry, and I know I've dealt with this in the past. I've got some clients right now that are dealing with it. They're being too nice with regards to how they manage their teams. I want to open it up to the folks here. I know we got a lot of coaches, but for the ones that aren't coaches, if you have employees, do you have the same issue where you find yourself being a little too nice at times with people? I'm not sure if we're all solopreneurs or.
Well, yeah, I'm a solopreneur as well, but I think we all have this interaction as well as we have groups that we're part of. We have networking groups that we're part of, social circles, and it's not even business related, but kind of the same thing. It's like I, turn the other cheek. I really don't want to hurt people's feelings. I try to be nice about things, but then there also comes a point where it's like personally, it's like, well, I don't want to be taken advantage of either. So I need to put my foot down, but like Dennis said, and I'm sure all of us agree, well, there's nice ways to do it. You don't have to be a jerk about it. And we're dealing with, I have a ladies group that I'm part of. And just like with any group, you get a lot of headstrong people in. Everybody has the best idea, and there's been some changes in the group, and it's a group that we're all doing things together and trying to grow this group together. But it would be nice to actually have everyone's point of view heard, or like, hey, we're pivoting. We're now going to start paying for XYZ. What do you guys think? Or you have any other input or something like that? So there's some hurt feelings going around right now. And one of them is mine. I'm just like, hey, this would have been nice to know, and maybe have some input of the rest of the group versus 3 very headstrong, a little snooty women that want to do things this way. It's like, well, why didn't you say something? I did, but I'm not going to leave the group because I like a lot of the ladies there. And I was just talking to another girlfriend. I was like, I don't need to like these people. I can be professional. I can be, supportive of this group and not be a biatch or anything, just for the sake of, I'm here to grow my business, to build relationships with people that I want in my room. And they may just be in the same space, but I don't have to let them in my room. So
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you, Kristen. That's a very good example. And like you mentioned, sometimes you have those behaviors, those confrontations, and people take the right action, but there are some people who avoid conflict and they do lead groups. I've seen that happen, and unfortunately, but there's ways to address those, and education and training, things that we can do, and some tools that we have here, just real fast, the your Harry window assertion model and lean model and the desk script. Does anybody hear these ones before? Anybody besides the coaches?
I've not heard of the DA desk script.
Okay, we're gonna go real fast. Let me see. And like I said, this one is a little bit more complex than your Harry window to conflict management, which is just a workflow. When what we know, what they know, because usually conflict is because of 2 sides. Everybody has a different interpretation, different assumptions, and things like that. That you have to convey. Communication is important, and you can see here the knowledge belongs only to others. Sometimes they don't share it. So communication is so important. Does anybody deal with sometimes disagreements based on the lack of communication? So,
or the lack of knowledge, right?
Yes, that's correct. Like flip phones don't work the same as a Android phone. So,
right, you
yeah.
have to clear your history.
But like I said, as people are used to always culture, like we mentioned, cultural background, some different things that impact. But here, you have to share some information and knowledge. And so you stay in the same, trying to be at the same ground level, and knowledge belonging only to myself. You have to share, because that's my ideology or my idea. And I don't share it. That's what I get conflict. They don't know what the other people know. So that's something that you have to acknowledge. So that's something that is part of the tool for conflict management under this one.
Miguel, can I share something on that previous slide?
Yes, sir.
To me, the real key, and some, I think, Brian, someone mentioned it earlier, is the communication piece. What I found here, whether it be a client, whether it be, somebody that you're engaging with on a consulting basis, what have you, what I've learned, and across cultures, I've been all over the world many times in the corporate world, I really enjoy asking more questions. And what I found is the more questions I ask, the more knowledge I glean. And I really understand the other person's perspective because they're sharing their knowledge. They're educating me as to, I may have a blind spot of ignorance that I don't even know, whether it be culture, whether it be a specific issue, what have you. And I found that if I open my mind up more to ask more strategic questions, at the end of the day, I'm educated. And then maybe I see that different perspective coming from that culture, coming from, that different way of thinking. And so that's kind of what this Johari window reminds me of, is really, it's a function of the questions that we ask. And are we willing to open up and willing to learn and glean another perspective? We don't have to agree with it, but you learn and you know how to deal with that person, whether it be emotionally or whatever the situation is, if I have more knowledge of where you're coming from. So that's kind of what this reminds me of, Miguel.
Oh, no, yes, that you hit right on the nail right there. Troy, because that's, like I said, you have to share information and learn from each other, especially culturally and ideas. So that's where we find the middle ground. And sometimes I see conflict for something very insignificant and just sharing a little piece of information and learning from each other. And, like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Or, that's so many things that create conflict that is not even worth it sometimes.
Agreed.
The appropriate assertion model, excuse me. Or, you can see the assertive model, number one, focus, get the person to focus on the issue, just not deviate, express concern about what's being observed, the observation on the subject or the issue. And then the goal, seek agreement on common goals. What is it? We have this conflict. What is our goal? We're going to increase sales. We have this idea, this initiative. Those are the goals. How are we going to get there? We have this conflict. Okay, let's have a resolution. And then we have a proposal, an action to take, and then feedback. Ask for alternatives, get ideas and feedback. That's when you can get different opinions, ideas, feedbacks, and the process and the action, and everybody can have a consent and show their disagreements or why not. But this is a good tool, especially when you put in new initiatives into a team. Rolling out teams in different areas of the organization. It can be sales, marketing, financial, KPIs. Sometimes I see people don't agree with the KPIs because impact one department more than another. They don't feel it's fair. You have to get to a consensus sometimes, and the feedback is going to tell you I don't have the resources to do that KPI, for example, and reach an agreed upon conclusion that it will work. Everybody has to be in a consent that everybody's going to put their effort, that it should work. And you guys have clients, people, they see conflicts. This is a way you can help them address those issues. Even like, for example, you're selling something to them, this is a way that they might have a conflict with something else they're using, or, it's a process you can help them. And the lean model of conflict resolution, this is, for me, it's a simple one and straightforward. Listen, understand, show willingness to learn. Right? We mentioned we have to share information, but you have to learn. Because if people don't want to learn to use Android, still want to use flip phones, it's not going to get a lot of functionality out of that flip phone, unfortunately. But you have to be willing to innovate and do new things and learn new things from different people and cultures. Cultures, as we move forward, there's a lot of variations and people in cultures all over the country. Empathize, that's very important. I see that fail sometimes to understand common ground and shared feelings. This is a question I have for everybody. How you guys think about empathizing? How important is that?
That's huge. Huge.
Massive. Agreed.
I love the way you started this and the way you structured it, because you started with, the assessment, the behavior, the communication style. You have to know how you're being heard. And you have to know how to listen to others. And I think that's key in order to empathize. You may not agree,
Mhm.
but you have to empathize. So in order to deploy any of these models, I think empathy is kind of the key. Just, you don't have to agree, but you have to understand and reach at least an understanding of the common ground, right? And know what someone else is, again, how you're being heard or how you want to be heard.
Correct. I see empathize, and empathy is a big key right now to develop teams and trust and communication. And that's something I promote a lot personally, and with CEOs, they're learning that more and more. So that was perfect explanation. Dennis, and like I explain, ask, share information, provide clarity, and ask again. It's a very good processes and negotiate. Like I said, is it the sports? Are the Cowboys good? Are they bad? Let's get in the middle. But it's things that you're not gonna get away with your team unless, yes, you're the owner, you're the CEO, and you do what you want. But getting to negotiate and having a middle ground and the solution and seek an agreement, and everybody is not gonna be happy. It's gonna be compromises, but at least move forward and don't let hinder that future communication. And do not. Some people I see, they keep that and they use it for the future a little bit, like Daniel mentioned, passive aggressive. You have to learn to move forward. So that's very important.
Miguel, maybe I can add a little bit to that. Last, I really like the model that you have, this lean model for conflict resolution. And just a recent experience for me this past weekend, So I went to help serve at a ranch to serve about 120 people. And I was serving in the kitchen. So it's a brand new, they just purchased this ranch, and they have a program there. And they were looking for volunteers to help in the kitchen. And it was just two of us working in the kitchen. So one, we were short-staffed to help 120 people. Two, they didn't really have any processes on how to manage the different, who would manage the coffee station or who would manage, the hot bar or the cold bar. So there was no instruction, no expectation set. So went into that space and already it was chaotic. And so, of course, there was tons of conflict happening, because everybody is saying, I know what to do and follow my lead. And a lot of heads butting. And, but through 1 to 2 days, it was kind of like, okay, let's kind of write down the process, what we're doing together, see if we can make some sense out of what needs to take place and agree on, even if it's just a high level step by step on what we need to do. But also the fact was also understanding that, okay, they're new, it's a brand new ranch. They've never done this before. So using that as empathy to understand why, as opposed to blaming and saying, hey, they don't have the process down. I think that helped to move us forward to eventually get to a place where we were able to serve well and people on the outside didn't know what was going on in the kitchen, right? So, but this really helps explain that scenario that I just went through. Just wanted to share.
No, thank you very much. That's a very good example. In a high-paced environment, something new, something can go wrong. Even if it goes wrong, you empathize, learn, and help your staff, help your team, and move forward. It's never gonna be super perfect. You will get there, but you use the right term, empathize with them and learn. And I know it went well, and it looks like it was a great event and good food, I can tell you. This script model for conflict resolution, the D describes the specific situation and clarity of the issues. Those more detailed, more structure. Express your concerns about the situation, action. There's more communication, more understanding of the situation. S suggests alternatives that have been discussed. They haven't been discussed, or something that people haven't bring to the table. Maybe they were not sure. So this is an opportunity and willingness to seek a resolution. And C, consequences of the situation and actions are stated. So people have more knowledge. They haven't shared it. They already went through something similar. So that's an example. and recognition of the impact of the conflict. That's something that you can state is a more structured way, but you guys can use these for like the client or, business or personal. I had a conflict with sometimes as a boss, like I said, empathize. And one of the things I teach, which I haven't learned, when you tell somebody, especially your wife, I can do that better, you're going to get into a conflict discussion and it's not going to end up well. So, but you have to be open to listen and yes, you don't know all the answers, but you have to listen to those who are bringing up the conflict and forward. So, I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation. Any questions, ideas, things you want to share?
I think, can I do a test?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to tell a story to maybe reinforce how we all carry. I mean, the assessment, I really love the way you laid this out, Miguel, because it goes through like understanding how you're being heard, what's being said, how you want to be heard. And I think the simplification of it is we all carry filters. We all have our own unique point of view. So the test that I'll run is I'm going to tell a story. We all are from Texas and we had the freeze. We all went through the freeze. Yeah. So the freeze happened right after we moved into a new house that we didn't know. It was 3 days after we had moved in. Everything froze. We're 37 miles away from the nearest gas station. I had to go get the generator. And long story short, for those days that we were frozen out, I was making gasoline runs 37 miles at minimum, trying to find a gas station that A, had gas, and B, it wasn't a line that extended all the way out into the street. So it was kind of like, beyond Thunderdome. I felt like Mad Max every day on the quest for gas. And I get in this line and I'm waiting, praying that there's still gasoline when I get to the pump. And as I'm sitting there, there's one person in front of me and the person is finishing at the pump. And this brand new looking Corvette Stingray comes flying into the parking lot and cuts in line. We've been waiting in line for like close to an hour. And this JA pulls in and stops. And then to make matters worse, he doesn't even go to the pump and start pumping. He goes inside like he's going to get a Starbucks or something. Now, there's a crisis happening. We've all been sitting in line. And this guy, what the hell? So let me pause there. Like, what do you do in that situation? Like, I'm thinking I need to get out and confront the guy. I've told this story in other forums and people are like, I'd slash his tires. Yeah. And what if I told you that the reason he was there was because right down the street, there was a family that was living in a van because that was the only way they could stay warm. And they had slid off the road and had flipped over. And the reason he was running into the gas station is because he didn't have battery on his cell phone and there was no other way for him to call. My filters said he was doing something wrong. My filter said I should confront him. And what if I did? Now I'm the JA, right? So we all carry those. We all reacted to that story a little bit differently. But in the end, those tools that you pointed out, right? And understanding what are my filters? What are my reactions? What are my experiences? And then leveraging the right tool for the right situation, right? Really powerful to start with that assessment, Miguel. I really love the way you laid it out, because you do have to understand how you're being heard and what you're seeing and know what filters you carry with you, and then applying those tools to address conflict.
And I think too, with that story, Dennis, you could have confronted him, but confronting, kind of going back to what you said earlier, is all about how you present it. So you could have confronted him in a low-key manner that could have determined whether he's being a JA or whether he legitimately needs help. And then at that point, you could have offered to help. So it's like, hey, buddy, what's going on here? Or hey, did you need some help with something or something wrong or whatever, kind of play the other side of it, make him either, if he was being a legit, good guy with the, thing down, yeah, man, I need help with XYZ. And then you go, and then that's off that path. Or if, because you're coming across really nice and calm and cool, and he's like, no, I need to get gas. And you're like, oh, that's what all of us are waiting here. And then he's going to turn around and feel like the JA that you just open it up and let him walk right into. So yeah, it's a presentation and the communication and how we communicate things. But yeah, it's like you said at the beginning, it's like, there's situations where it's kind of like somebody's doing something funky and you just kind of want to go like, dude. And then you realize might have been a mental, an individual who had, certain disabilities, and you're just kind of like, oh, well, now I'm the JA, so kind of how we react. Again, we don't have any control of the situation, but we only have control over how we react, right?
Love
I
that.
want to add to what Kristen said. So one of the things that I've learned so far in situations like that is to ask myself the question, what would cause a reasonable human being to act this way? To pause first when I see a situation that's like, inappropriate. And the first thing to come is, what would cause a reasonable human being to act in this way? And I think if I pause that way and ask the question, it allows me to actually say, okay, there could be a million reasons, not the only reason that I'm thinking about, but there could be other reasons, which, to Kristen's point, asking, then approaching that person at that point and finding out what's going on.
I love that. That's a great question.
And to further one step farther is, if he was being a jerk, do you really want to be involved in that anyways? Because then it could escalate to even further. And if he's a non-law abiding citizen and et cetera, you, by being cool about it and he being a jerk, then you have a choice. Are you going to do something about it? Is it really smart to do something about it? Because clearly he's not of right mind, so. Cool, good conversation.
Very good.
Very good. That's true. Very good points, and address why
Just
we
a
don't
point of-
know.
A point of clarity too, that story was made up. It didn't really happen. But the Corvette, I was channeling my energy to Phil, Mr. Corvette on Mr. Barrera. I imagined Phil running in, screaming at his Corvette, and everyone thinking he was a JA, but actually he was there to help. So I was channeling you, Phil.
There you go. That's great. Great conversation. Thank you, everybody. And like I said, we are human beings with different assumptions, but that's a good example, because I've been into those situations, and you assuming something is totally different, and you have to be the bigger man to assume you were wrong, and you have to empathize, like somebody's going through something emotionally, something that's not normal sometimes, and I see that sometimes when people, I'm a volunteer at the shelter and a board member, and people judge a lot of people. They go to the shelters and things, and you don't know what they're going through. I do talk to them, I do try to help them, but we judge a lot before we learn from the reality. That's true. And then once we learn, we have to be the bigger men to accept we were wrong. So that's a very good example, Dennis. Thank you.
Any other thoughts, perspectives, stories? Okay. Well, I'm assuming the role of Trisha today, which she likes to start on time, end on time, make sure that the collective cats are herded, and so since she's not here, that's my role. So it looks like we're gonna end on time, maybe a little bit early. But before we do, I want to thank. Well, I first want to ask is that one more time: is there anyone that wants to come off mute and offer perspective or ask any kind of questions or? Okay. Well, thank you, Miguel. I love the way that you structured that it starts with how are you being heard? How are you being communicated? How do you want to be communicated with? And then once you understand that, even in the most extreme of conflicts, right, recognize that and then leverage those tools and walk through that process and thoughtfully go through the, that dialogue. Were you raising your hand, Phil?
Yeah, I want to tell Miguel I like his at behind him.
What is it?
The at Star Wars to his left on his shelf.
Oh. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That was a cool little Easter egg to notice there. I didn't even notice that thing.
I always notice them. I got a whole bunch to my right.
Yeah, I saw that right away. I had to block it. I had to block it because you had a cowboy's hat, helmet there.
Not cowboy. Oh, that's good stuff over there, man. Come on now.
But I just want to say thank you for the invitation. Thank you for everybody who spent their busy time with us today. I just want to thank everybody.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. I will let Trisha know that everybody was on their best behavior and we had another amazing TLN. And I wish you a happy week. We do this every month. So for our regulars, continue to come back, please, and share the love. We always hope to see more and more. Have a great week. Have a great month. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you all soon.
Take care and happy Mother's Day, ladies.
Bye, guys.
Everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.